Aldo, thanks so much for coming on. So you've been charged by a rhino, held at gunpoint, climbed Everest, served as in the Royal Marines, obviously. You've had a lot of times you've been on the edge of death. Does that not worry you?
No, I mean, we're all kind of teetering on the edge of it, aren't we, one way or another? But the job that I've done over the years, leading expeditions into some of the sort of most extreme, remote and sort of hostile parts of the planet are by choice. I choose to take certain risks and to mitigate as much of the objective, sort of, or subjective hazards as I can, as opposed to drifting through 50 to 80 years, taking huge risks with not doing exercise, not wearing a seatbelt, not wearing a bike helmet when I'm riding a bike. So, the stuff that I do, I'm making a choice. That's what I want to do. And I don't just jump into it. There's, if you look at the outdoors in the UK this year, we've had probably more deaths in places that people shouldn't be dying by people getting outside, are motivated and they want to get outside and they want to do stuff, but they haven't, spent time either learning the craft or the trade or preparing well for it, and taking big, huge risks.
Do you mean like people falling off stuff or going out?
Also, it's just going out and getting stuck in bad weather and dying, on a ridge that shouldn't be happening. And a lot of that is to do with, social media, internet, and it's to do with the world that we live in now, where everyone wants to be a hero straight away without putting in the hard yards. Like, it takes time to be able to go out into an environment and assess the risk there and survive. So I choose to put myself in these situations. And another reason that I do that is because it makes everything else in life easier. If you're taking and making hard decisions in your daily life when you can, then it makes your life easier later on. Does that make sense? So easy choices now equals a harder life later on. Okay. So it's, if I'm not exercising and I'm not looking after my sleep and I'm not, making sure that I'm aligned with purpose and passion and curiosity to the line of work that I'm doing, then later on down the line, you get big problems. So I choose to put myself in risky situations because I guess early on it was about testing myself, and much more recently it's been more about like telling a story, whether it's about the environment or whether it's about conservation. Or
I just want to double check that you've subscribed to the show, because it really helps us continue these important conversations. Thanks. When you get to those really extreme moments where you think this is actually really risky, what's going on in your body at that time?
My brain shuts down. So I'm not able to think. So I'll give you an example. I got all the way inside and down to the bottom of a volcano.
Standard.
Largest lava lake on Earth. The previous time that I'd been in there, it had erupted while I was almost in the bottom. And so I had this preconceived knowledge already that I'd been in this volcano when it was erupting. I then come back a year later, I get in and I get all the way down to the bottom. I already know about the poisonous gas in there and what it does to you. I already know about the rock fall. The last 80 meters was a huge amount of very unstable rock. There was no one coming to get me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I land on the bottom. I'm scared. So the physical signs are that, my mouth is dry. My legs are shaking because they're pumped full of adrenaline. My sort of thinking, cognitive, I was watching a camera footage of me talking to the camera and it's all very monosyllabic and, I'm not making much sense. And my breathing becomes super fast and it's in the top of my chest. So I'm not degassing or off-gassing the carbon dioxide, which then induces more panic and more thoughts of doom and gloom. So that's what's happening physically. Mentally, I recognize what's happening in the situation. I try to recognize. I sort my breathing out is the first thing. Because like I said there, when I'm in a position where I'm sort of getting worried or scared, then I'm breathing in the top part of my lungs. So the first thing I do is then and try and get us rid of as much carbon dioxide out of my lungs as possible, and then control my breathing. In the process of controlling my breathing, I can then control how I'm thinking and what words I'm using externally or internally to talk to myself. Because if I'm not aware of what words I'm using and what I'm saying, it's probably negative and it's probably quite destructive. So I just remove all of that chance. I then start talking to myself in the third person and giving myself instructions, because that's one of the easiest ways to start doing stuff. Like once you start taking action, you're metabolizing the chemicals in your body, literally metabolizing the adrenaline in your body. So you no longer feel like you're going to throw up and you're sick and your legs are made of lead. You're actually doing something. And that gives you a semblance of control. And that semblance of control is enough to allow you, to start making decisions. And as soon as you get out of denial and deliberation and start making decisions, then other options open up. So really it's a whole cascade of things. But, I'm the same as everyone else. When the shit hits the fan, I get scared for an obvious reason. I have the same physiological reactions as someone that gets a shitogram at work on an email or gets fired, or, they get caught cheating, or they find out their partner, something's happened to them, or, a serious illness in the family. It's the same thing. And then it's just how you deal with that, how I deal with that.
I'm just really interested by the fact that you're right, the adrenaline response is the same, and we all have that fight or flight thing, because I guess evolutionary wise, the adrenaline's there to make you peg it.
Do something.
Or fight back. I don't know how you do that in a volcano or a weird email at work. So it's more just the fact that how you handle it differently, because a lot of people, I think, would go through that reaction and then just crumble.
Yeah.
And it's how you have insight to go, right, this is what I need to do to correct that.
I think the biggest thing that happens, people say, I'm obviously not a psychologist or a doctor. I have been, spent my life 30 odd years working in these environments. So I do have some insight on it. It is that, when these things happen, you've got choices. And if you can get straight to a decision point straight away, instead of just sat there waiting for something to happen, then that gives you a semblance of control. I would say all of it probably hangs off of awareness. If you're starting to feel like, for me, if I'm like, my mouth's getting dry, I'm like, what is this I'm feeling? Why am I feeling like this? I'm just going to give a talk. I'm not going to die on stage. It doesn't really matter, breathe, talk to yourself. But in somewhere, and it's maladaptive, but in a volcano or out tracking wild animals, if you're tracking wild animals in the jungle of Malaysia and you're sharing the same track in square 2 mile or 2 kilometer radius with a huge male tiger, then, there's obvious, reasons there to be nervous, apprehensive. But I would say it's an awareness, working out using facts, like, is this real, this threat? And if it is real, what can I do now to change the course of how it's going to end up? And more often than not, what I was going to say is, fight or flight, everyone says that. What actually happens the majority of time is freeze. You speak to any amount of blokes that, like, if this happens, I'm going to get up and I'll fly the plane, I'll land it, I'll do this. When the shit hits the fan, the majority of us, myself included, because I'm just a normal human being, our default is to do nothing. It's to just freeze and be like, what happened? I can't make sense of this. So that's why, instead of, this denial and deliberation sort of period when something happens, is just go straight to making a decision and do something that involves moving your body, controlling your breathing, and being aware of how you talk to yourself.
I really like that. Adrenaline, you're right, goes past that point of being useful.
Yeah. And
when you hit the panic stage, you're flooded with the stuff, but you're standing there, deer in the headlight style.
And no one gets brighter, when the shit hits the fan. No one gets more clever or smarter. You go back to your default setting.
Moving on from the military then, you've done some, I don't know how to refer to it in a more professional way, but crazy shit. So you've got the highest marathon world record.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for something like that?
I didn't.
Well, guess what I'm doing tomorrow then?
Yeah. It's I do the couch to world record. I guess that goes back to my state of readiness. Yes. So I went out with an organization called Becoming X. It was sponsored by Ford, and we went out and we ran the world's highest marathon. So over, you got to acclimatize for like 10 days, and then you climb the world's highest volcano, which is 6,893 meters. So like 22,500 feet. Climb that, which takes like 12, 15 hours. And then the marathon distance starts from the top of that. So you're looking at, it was 2 full days of moving, like 48, 9 literally hours of moving your body. So you can't really train for that because that's quite destructive. Training at that level is going to wreck your body. But my like state of readiness is reasonably middle of the road to sort of high, as in like I train, I
run.
run.
On the higher end, really, wouldn't we?
I mean,
you say middle of the road.
I don't know, because it's like, who do you compare yourself to? And it's a good point there. Is I don't compare myself to anyone because, like, I have a different body, I have different background, I've got different heights. I'm short ass, so I don't compare myself to anyone. I just know that, can I get off the couch, metaphorically speaking, and climb a 22,500 feet or 7,000 meter volcano and run a marathon off the back of it? And I would say that 90% of that is mindset, and the rest of it's like your body can probably, most people's body can probably do a bit of moving over 2 days.
Yeah. I hear a lot of this stuff, having spoken to a few people now in sort of the higher end military world. And there's a lot of this thing about mental mindset. I get that. But on the other hand, your body has to just be more resilient than X% of the population. Otherwise, it just fall apart. Yeah,
I don't know if it's that or whether, I mean, I did it with like, I've still got a recurring Achilles tendon injury from the Arctic race that I did with Foxy and Woody and Carl. So I don't know if it's that. I think it's more that I've got a higher threshold for the suck. I don't mind the pain. I don't mind how hard it is. I don't mind that I've not slept in 2 full night sleep cycles and I can still do the business. Granted, my decision making will be poor. My ability to make a moral decision will be rock bottom. But like, I can still grind through the pain of it, and without a blanket sort of sweeping statement. Having spent a life doing things like that are hard, that require me to be able to crack on for 3 weeks after having sprained an ankle and torn 2 ligaments off the bone. Yes, I need to be able to do that. And you need to grind through it. There's sometimes there's no other option. So, you get to the higher ends when people can, they can smash out 24 hours or 48 hours, elite athletes, but they're so finely tuned that without the sleep and the exact calorific sort of count in what they're eating, then they're broken. Whereas I think me and, people like me are the opposite end of it, is that I can grind through hardship without the nutrition. Like, I can grind through that marathon that I did there. I did it on 2 granola bars. I had no 15 eggs beforehand. I didn't have like a pasta dish, the day before. I climbed a 7,000 meter volcano the day before, didn't have any sleep, and then did the marathon. And in that time of doing the marathon, I had like two granola protein bars. So I've got that in the tank for a short amount of time. But, like I say, decision making down the Swanee, likelihood of getting injured through the roof. And I'm not doing it that often.
I feel those granola bars, whatever company that was, you should find out, because God, they could make some serious money out of that one.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Halfway through, I go, I really fancy a sandwich.
I mean, yeah, but you're not getting it. So I'm very good at that. When I'm away, if I don't think about steak, and I just think, what have I got in my bag? If that's all I've got, then I'm like, I can't wait for that granola bar.
I mean, admittedly, I'm never going to do the highest marathon in the world, but if I did, I'd prepare better than having 2 granola bars.
Yeah.
How did you recover?
What did I do? I went skiing. I got back.
Obviously.
I got back, and then I went up to London, gave a talk the day I got back off the flight, and then the next morning at like 6, dragged the family up to the airport and flew out skiing for a week.
Wow.
That's how I recover. Like I recover by doing stuff.
So what? I'll be honest with you. That's not the normal physiology of the average human.
We'll see how long I last. So I might spank in at 50.
Wait, how old are you now?
48.
Yeah. Okay. How much have you learned about what the male body can actually take?
Endure.
Yeah.
My physical body can endure a lot. It endures way more than my mind by default could endure. Like my body can, if I could switch my mind off, I could probably walk my body until it physically snapped in half. Getting your mind to do that is another thing. And the more I guess the more I age and become older, the more I'm aware of that recovery time. And actually for me, it was more mentally the recovery of coming back from a big expedition, a big world first expedition, or, climbing a big mountain or whatever. I would come back and then be looking at going into the next one and into the next one. And, I suppose I wasn't getting to the point of being burnt out, but I was becoming complacent with doing epic stuff. And I guess if you go down that road far enough, then you're looking down the barrel of burnout, overwhelm, like all the classic symptoms that someone gets in an office where they've just got too much on top of them. So I do spend more time in like recovery mode now than I do in thrashing myself. Like if anyone saw the training that I do or that Foxy does, it's not ridiculous to in fact, it's very normal to, yourself, we lift, run, do a bit of bike, having that bias to action. I think what then separates me and it allows me to do these jobs is that I then have a deep-seated knowledge and confidence in my own abilities, without any external, regard. Like I don't need someone to pat me on the back or someone to recognize what I've done to be able to do these jobs. So I do think a lot of it is mental, and therefore a lot of the recovery that I have to do is mental recovery. And I don't ever train them. There's no way I overtrain.
Right.
I probably overeat the wrong stuff, but I definitely don't overtrain.
Do you think there's a hidden health toll that comes with being more elite?
That's a good question. It's probably a double-edged sword of doing too much, which I don't think I do physically. I don't think I do too much. And maybe if I was doing ultras all the time, which I'm definitely not, of all the stuff that I've done, ultra running, moving seems to be the most destructive because you're just on your feet moving for 15, 16 hours a day. So that seems quite destructive, but I don't do that all the time. And that's why I don't train for that either. The most amount of running I'll ever do is 6 to 10 miles. And that might be once or twice a week. I might miss it for 2 weeks. I might miss it for a month, depending on work and where I'm going and what I'm doing. But ultimately, I just have this bias to action. I'll lift as much as I can in the week, maybe 3, 4, 5 times, and run and bike.
So it's more the mix now, isn't it? It's make yourself ready to do whatever.
Yeah. Can you do a marathon? Can you do this job where you're going to be in the jungle carrying a heavy bag, for 3 weeks? I just want to be ready to do this like meat puppet. I want to be able to use it to explore the world, as much as I can, and before I die. That's essentially this is the method by which I travel and see the world by. So I want it to work as best as it can.
Have a suggestion for a Man Alive episode or thought about something said in this episode? Comment below and I read every one. Let's have a look at some blood, shall we? So people listening to this will assume that your blood tests are probably going to be like the gold standard for health because of what you've, Marine, Everest, extreme endurance, all this stuff. There are some great results, which I'll run through you, and there are a couple of results which might surprise you. So we do a full panel, and we look at around 60 or 70 markers on here, actually. We did your hormone profile, and we did your testosterone, and I did the same with Jason Fox, obviously. So I want you to tell me, do you think your testosterone, seeing as you both had it done the same time of day as well, which is really useful, do you think yours was higher or lower than him?
I wouldn't know how to objectively guess.
If we said testosterone is a hormone that gives you energy, it gives you motivation, it gives you sex drive, it keeps your brain functioning, it gives you clarity. It's the thing that makes you more of who you are. And a normal range, let's say, is 15 to 30.
15 to 30. I would guess similar.
Yeah, you were exactly the same as Foxy's.
I mean, we've had a similar life where, we're a same age, same lifestyle, same amount of training. We've probably had a very similar life.
So your result was 10 nanomoles per litre.
What's that out of 30?
And it should be 15 to 30.
15 to 30.
So it would indicate your testosterone isn't as good. And when we said this to Foxy, his response was, I think, fuck, which was beautifully put. What's your take on that?
I suppose I've never thought about it in that, like, I don't feel like I suffer from low mood or ability to train or motivation. So it's never really crossed my mind. I suppose I have been, it's very prominent now where blokes are looking out for themselves more, and using either TRT or other ways of making themselves feel better. But for me, my mood has always been, I think my wife would probably disagree. So yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, if it, subjectively, if it's low, then, am I like, what am I supposed to feel like? But I do actually feel all right, I think, and I haven't as yet noticed the slippery slope of losing muscle mass or low mood.
We wouldn't treat you really unless you had symptoms. So TRT is only indicated for men that have symptoms and low testosterone. The question more so is, why was it low then? And I'd probably want to repeat it and find out why. Yeah. But currently, if you feel amazing and your and your testosterone level is not quite where it should be, then we don't really treat patients. Now, whether we should be or not is a different discussion, because there's lots of implications around low testosterone affecting bone and muscle and cognition and stuff. The other difficulty, of course, is that you are, like you said, comparing with yourself. So is it that maybe you're just not as sharp as you were maybe 10 years ago, but is that normal aging for you? We don't really know. So there's lots more kind of dig into it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, could it be related to
kids?
Recovery? Well, kids definitely.
No sleep.
Definitely related to sleep. Definitely little kids. Could it also be related to extreme activity? And it probably is.
Well, that test I did last week, and I just got back 10 days. I just finished the marathon like 10 days before, had a day at home, had no sleep because I was packing, then went skiing with the kids, which anyone who's been skiing with kids knows it's not, it's quite stressful getting them out the door on a snow day. And then came back on this Sunday and then was in on the test on the Monday. So, I mean, it could easily be not recovered.
There's a really good example around how physical activity, even though you're super fit, you can push yourself to that point that it shows it can be having a detrimental effect on other parts of your health, but we just don't know about it because you're so used to it, I guess.
It'd be interesting to do that again in 6 months' time.
Assuming you're not doing some other crazy marathon, of course, yeah. The other thing that was quite interesting that I looked at was around your metabolism and blood sugars. So we measured different things in terms of metabolic health, and we look at aspects like your thyroid and a thing called HbA1c, which is your average of blood sugar level over 3 months. And we've started adding in insulin sensitivity. Now, your thyroid's perfect, which is really good. Your HbA1c level is perfect. So effectively it's saying that you can metabolize sugar okay. You can smash a packet of Haribo, doesn't matter, you know. But then your insulin sensitivity was a bit off, and that's a bit higher than it should be. Now, you don't use it as a diagnostic factor, but it suggests you may not be quite as sensitive to metabolizing that sugar as we first thought. What's your diet like now?
I've never watched like what I eat. I don't count, you know, I don't count anything. I've never been like, I have to have that and have to have this. And so I just eat like 9 times out of 10 home cooked food, probably quite a lot of pastas and stuff like that because it's easy. And, you know, I've just never watched what I eat. So yeah, I guess that could be with that. So is that, so I wouldn't know unless I looked back whether that was just my baseline.
Correct.
Or do we know that that is actually a figure that's out and I need to watch?
It's a figure that's out.
Yeah.
But we don't know if it's always been out for you and this is part of your unique metabolism, or it's the fact that when you do your blood test, you've just been on an extreme physical event.
Yeah.
I don't really know how that would affect
So if I looked back at my like previous blood results, you would be able to
potentially, if they've tested that testicles, but I'd still want to do it again in a couple of months when you're not doing that activity and see what happens.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So that's like, look, you know, that's diabetes.
Yeah. So
type
if you
2, type 1, whatever.
If you were not healthy and we just took at the average person, took at this result, high insulin levels suggests an early sign of insulin resistance, which can then lead to type 2 diabetes, which is obviously massively endemic across society now. The problem with type 2 diabetes is we tend to associate it with laziness, not eating properly, people that aren't moving, etc. And it has a really bad connotation, which isn't really fair because, of course, true type 2 diabetes is just people where their pancreas doesn't work quite as well as it used to and they can't get as much insulin out as they did when they were younger. And that's what it really should have been. It's just that we've been taken over by this really rubbish sedentary lifestyle that all gives us chronic diseases of modern living.
Yeah.
But hopefully I don't think that's really you.
Well, it'd be good to keep an eye on it.
God, sure. Imagine trying to get you to do some more exercise. I think on the other side of it, your core health was really good. So your immune system's really strong. You're not anemic. All your red cell count markers are really positive. Your inflammatory levels were virtually unmeasurable. Kidney function was perfect. Your liver function's really good. All your vitamin levels are really good as well on top of this. I mean, it's a great, it's kind of like, I'd look at that and go, oh, I'd be happy with those results. Maybe not your testosterone. The rest of it I'm really happy with. Do you think there are things that people could take from that and think, if I could apply that to my life, what could they do? So a few years ago, 2023, I then had that same thought because, you know, my in the last year, I lost my sister, my grandma, and my mum. So it's a busy year, but those were 2 cancers, and they had my grandma had dementia. But it just made me start thinking, I've been smashing myself, you know, physically, and, you know, the other side of it, like the military's heavy on boozing, you know, work hard, play hard, that side of things. And I was like, I don't actually know how healthy I am. You know, I can look in the mirror and think, right, I don't have a gut, or, you know, I look all right for a 48-year-old. But, you know, I had no idea about like what was happening inside my body. And that kind of made me look actually more at that. And I've been more aware of my diet since then, since that point. And my dad's a shift worker, and he's sort of recently been diagnosed with type 2. He's a paramedic.
1.5, yeah. And it seems like a lot of shift workers who are eating through the night, you know, for multiple years, 20 years, and lack of sleep and all the rest of it, that is one of the direct effects of that. So I think with all of those things combined, it just made me think, actually, I don't know how fit and healthy I actually am. So it's you know, this is now, I think for me, doing that would form how I go forward. So what do I take from it is like, if I'm deficient in something, how can I, vitamin D or vitamin A, I take, I only take 3 supplements, so a multivit, a vitamin D, and a cod liver oil, I don't know if you can measure that, but, and they're like the main things that I take outside of creatine and protein.
Yeah. I was going to say creatine's really good.
Yeah.
Creatine's awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think there's one thing you could do taking forward from this that you might be able to change to improve your health further?
Yeah, I think, last year I gave up booze for 4 months. And I actually felt that was good. So I think each year my plan would be to give up, I don't heavy booze, but, I don't want it to be part of my, my default, if that makes sense. So that, but then also being aware of the bloods like that, the insulin thing that's worrying to me, because I don't know what that means. And does that mean in 10 years time, I'm going to be type 2 diabetic or whatever? You can train as much as you like, but if it's the diet that's doing that to me, then I need to change that.
I think that's fair. I think with all these sort of things, unless they're like cancer markers or something scary, then usually the key is repeat.
Yes.
And if you feel good and your lifestyle is healthy, first thing I'd say is don't panic. Look at what you're doing. Can I improve day-to-day things? Do I need more than 2 granola bars to survive a marathon? I'd say yes, but I'm not an expert in marathons. And then I'd recheck it. And then you can get a plan of where you need to go.
Yeah.
Do you have a mate who's going through a rough patch right now? Share this with them today, because one conversation can change a life. Have you thought that your expeditions have ever changed how you approach longevity?
Yeah, I think it might not be what you're expecting. An awareness of me being in these places mentally, I think, has a much more profound effect on me than the physical act of carrying a rucksack. Like, you walk into Everest Base Camp, it's 10 days of moving, carrying a rucksack. That's good for your fitness. But I think what it's better for is your mental state, your sort of emotional. I guess like what I recognize now is that my mental and emotional health and well-being directly affects my physical, and vice versa. Like, if I'm feeling shit mentally, then I'll go and exercise, and that brings me back onto an even keel. But then, say, walking somewhere on the weekend, going up into the hills, has that effect on your mental and emotional side as well. It's good. Yeah. So I think, the more of those expeditions and the less I do of those expeditions, the more I notice it, that I need that.
So really,
I do talk around in wormholes as well. You need to pull me back out.
It seems like it's a positive thing. Like, generally, it's not that you're fearful of getting older, but it's more that you appreciate life better. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I have a very, it's not unique. Anyone that's been in circumstances where they've been close to or seen people lose their lives, then you realize how lucky you are and how grateful. So I went to Iraq in 2003, 25 years old. So to have that knowledge kind of makes you look at life differently. And it, for me, it's, I always appreciate it. And, if someone, came up to you and said, right, you're going to be on Earth for around about 80 years. What do you want to do with it? Like, no sane person would say, do you know what, I think I might use most of that time to sit at a desk in an office.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe that, that's just me, but if objectively you were to look at it, right, you're going to get stuck on Earth for 80 years. What do you want to do? Well, I want to see as much of that as possible. I want to move around that as much as possible in the real world. I want to experience it. And I think the more connected we become with AI, the more interconnected we become with robots and all the tech that's making life so much better in a way, people will crave the things that make us human more. And I think that's outside nature and human connection. You just need to look back at COVID pandemic and what happened and what everyone suddenly realized. They were like, you can hear it now, blackbird alarming, you pay attention to these things that are uniquely human and the ability to spend time on that. And I think that's, as one ages, that has as much an effect on your health, longevity, as the physical, the physical fitness side of it.
I agree. Yeah.
I should say I'm not qualified in any of this.
Great. Well, that's good to know. No, I think you're right. Obviously I appreciate it's not the podcast discussing me, but I think I was chatting to a mate a couple of weeks ago. We were just chatting. We've been docs for about 20 something years now. And I've mentally lost count of the number of people that I've seen die, which is probably something a psychotherapist should be speaking to me about. But you realize it's become so chronic, and it's happened so much that I now think, God, I'm so lucky to be 47 and still pretty healthy and doing all the stuff I want to do. And they say that your 40s are supposed to be some of your most depressing times as a guy, but actually, God, I'm really happy where we are. So
I think that's, this paradigm will change as people live longer. It wasn't that long ago that people died at 40s and 50s. Yeah. Sort of comparatively speaking. And it probably will be in our lifetime that people are hitting 120 routinely, 130 routinely, once you can start to optimize, food and medicine and disease. But from what I can tell, the best things that I can do right now is my sleep and my exercise and what I eat.
We can do this then when you come back at 110. We can see you just climbed your next mountain. Right. What do you think being a man sort of meant to you in the Royal Marines?
If I'm being honest, never questioned what being a man was about, because I was just busy being a bloke. So it's only, I suppose, recently in the current landscape of things, there's obviously a huge problem with, is it a problem? There's a huge issue now with young men not really knowing where they fit in. And you can see that the jobs that once suited a man to be able to lift and move and, hard physical things, they're gone. And if they're not gone now, they'll be gone very, very soon. I mean, Amazon drivers are now wearing glasses that are essentially recording all the information to eventually train up the robots that will do the same thing, right? So all of these things that, once would suit a bloke are kind of not there anymore. So I think there's lots of different things happening in the world of being a bloke, and trying to work out what that means, is difficult. And there's so much noise out there about what it is to be a man and what it means. And I tell you, probably what I'm teaching my two boys, what it means to be a man is to be morally courageous, to do the right thing when it's the hardest thing to do, especially when no one's watching. They're 5 and 2, and we have these conversations. And
it's a tough night in your house, isn't it?
They're like, Jeez. Cheers, Dad. And for both of them, to lead with, because everyone, is a leader at some point in their life and their walk of life, but to lead with courage and compassion, and I think and kindness. And if you're doing those things, then you're on track to being a good bloke or a good woman. And so I kind of, I've never really had a deep dive into masculinity and what it is and what it isn't. I just crack on being a good human being, or I try to be as much as I can.
I think it's a really difficult situation for younger men coming through now. My son's 13, and I worry about the world that he's being exposed to in a way that we just didn't have, especially social media and all sorts of stuff. It's terrible. That is,
the double-edged sword of it. It can be used for good, but it's sadly, the people that, I guess it's like sex, the ones shouting the loudest about it are probably not doing it right. And the ones shouting the loudest about what it is to be a man is, they're probably not doing the things that anyone would class as, as someone you would want your son to turn out to be like?
I wouldn't want him dating someone that's shouting while they're having sex. And it's not happening in my house.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
I think you're right. There's lots of things I think maybe that you've experienced in terms of being in the wilderness, being in the Marines. Do you think that's something that you could impart wisdom to the average guy who might be struggling now?
I think, this is, like I say, I'm not qualified, but this is my opinion, is that we collectively, all of us, have become inwardly focused. It's all about me and its comparison to everyone else that's out there and where do I fit in. A much better path is to put blinkers on and to find something that you're curious and that you're passionate about and that aligns with your values. I'm talking about work. The work landscape is going to change drastically in the next 15 years, the next 5 years probably. University will, in a lot of cases, become obsolete because that information is essentially free, and you can learn much quicker. There will be systems in place that you can learn an entire 4-year course in 6 months. So I think all of that landscape is changing. So I think for people, young men, let's talk about that because I know about that. What we need to be doing is to be covering the bases well. We need to align ourselves in whatever direction that you want to be going in that tickles your curiosity, that you're passionate about, that you're intrinsically motivated about. Everyone wants to be famous and everyone wants to be on YouTube and everyone wants to be a famous YouTuber, but you dig down into what it is they want to YouTube about, no idea about the subject matter. They just want to be famous, right? Or a YouTuber. But find something that aligns with you intrinsically, and then that way you'll never struggle. It's the same as the Royal Marines training. It's the longest, hardest infantry training in the world. And if you're doing it for recognition from your dad, or recognition from your peer group, or recognition from social media, or likes, or follows, the second day that things get difficult and you're cold, wet, tired, and hungry, you're going to pull the plug. Mm. Whereas if you're intrinsically motivated, in line with your values, all the rest of it, then you'll just grind through it and you'll do the hard yards. So that's it. And then cover the bases well as sleep, exercise, and nutrition. We're designed to move our bodies. We're designed to think as human beings. And we cut all of that off by getting in a car, driving somewhere, sitting down at a desk all day. And if obviously jobs are going to be changing again with the education system and AI and things like that, we're going to, in theory, have more time and less to do. And if we're just sat around the house watching, social media stuff or YouTube, then we're going to become very, very unhappy. And anecdotally, from my point of view, when I get outside and do something, I took the boys camping at the weekend. We're in March, chilly, wet, easy not to do it. More difficult, more admin, more drying kit, by doing it. But, each one of those little things just instills a little bit more confidence in coping, a little bit more resilience, or a bit more capacity to deal with shit situations.
How do you think being in the Marines has helped you learn to be a good dad?
The jury's out. Yeah, I'd have to wait and see what the kids say. I'm strict. I'm not Victorian dad, but kids, from what I can see, need routine and discipline. And I give them that. I give them the structure that they need to be able to explore further from the house. Like, I want them to be confident to leave the house and go and explore the world and then come back. And the only way they can do that is if they have self-confidence, they're resilient, they can think laterally, they can make decisions quickly. So I think, potentially the military stuff teaches, if the only thing they got was the self-discipline 101 sort of motivation piece, then that's like 90% of the way there.
Would you want your kids to experience the same life that you've had?
I would never push either of my kids into the military, especially especially in the next, whatever's happening in the next probably 5 to 10 years. If they wanted to, I would fully back them up and support them. What I would like them to do is to experience the world, the planet, as I have. And, you know, a lot of times it will be different. You know, there's some animals that are on the edge of extinction right now, they will never be able to see. But I would like them to be able to have the smarts of their own to be able to go and explore the world in a way that allows them to do it. You know, take the risks when they need to take the risks, but not stupid risks, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What parts of you do you think have softened since you've been a dad? Say something. There's something that's softened.
No, I there's loads that's happened that I would never have given the time of day before, and I see it now, and I'm like, you know, I want to cry. You know, there's a huge amount for me, you know, and it was never on the cards to have kids, you know, and then my wife in lockdown was like, oh, I'll do this job and then maybe we'll think about kids. And I was like, we need to get going now. I'm not getting any younger. So yeah, since then, I guess I have more awareness of myself. So I do an emotion wheel with the kids every night before bed.
What, sorry?
An emotion wheel. It's like a little disc off Amazon that's got like 150 words on it. It's got like 5 in the middle. It's like happy, sad, angry. But then it goes out into loads of other words that allow you to describe your emotions. I realized I personally was massively devoid of an ability to articulate my emotions.
What do you do with the emotion wheel?
It's super simple. You base it. I can't remember where I even heard about it, but I bought it offline. It's like £3. It's got the main emotions in the middle, and then it goes out. So like for each emotion, you might get like 50 words that allow you to be granular about your, it's not anger, it's frustration, or it's, you know, jealousy, or, you know, so we just talk about the day. What did you feel today? I felt happy because that, or I'll be like, well, I felt angry today because I felt, I don't know, I felt like someone had wronged me, or, you know, so anyway, what I noticed is I was devoid of the granular vocabulary that allows me to explain my emotions. Right. So anyway, I've learned a lot from the kids because I'm like, we're doing this together, but really it's for me. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose the awareness, you know, when I see someone struggling now, I think that was someone's kid, or that's someone's dad, or that's someone's mum. So it's probably more of an awareness of like other people. Everyone's struggling. Everyone's got their own issues going on, and they're important to someone. Before
I had kids, I used to do a lot of A&E and trauma and stuff, and it was more enjoyable stuff. And kids would come in, I could put big lines in them, and the stuff that you'd think, oh, it's awful. And I'd never had an issue with it. Had my own kids, and literally like the day after, I was like, I can't give them a paracetamol in case it makes the mouth taste funny.
Yeah.
And I cannot, I just couldn't. Your opinion of the world changes so much, irreversibly.
And I think that's a good thing, because I wouldn't have had that awareness, you know, it's opened up a whole other world of stuff that I didn't know about. And I guess like if I hadn't had them, I wouldn't know about that to be sad. But now knowing about it, I kind of feel like fuller, more emotionally engaged. And I don't know.
Well, I don't want to go too existential on this, but a bit like exploring the world physically, you could argue this is just adding something else to your mental wealth.
It changed how I explored, because normally I'd go to the jungle and I'd be like, another jungle trip. Whereas as soon as I had Atlas and he was able to engage, I'd be like, this is a millipede. I'd take a picture of the millipede, I send it to him, or the morpho butterfly, or, you know, whatever the thing is. So I would be more engaged in the expedition and the thing when I was away from them, knowing that he would either see a video or a photo, or you know, I could talk to him about it.
It's really nice. All right, some closing questions. Would you say that strictness and discipline has freed you, or has it trapped you?
I think strictness, of discipline, and motivation are probably two of the most freeing things, because it's the routine, the discipline, the motivation that gets you to eat properly, train, which then allow you the freedom to travel later on and see the world. You know, that lack of self-discipline, the lack of routine and the lack of motivation early on means you get to my age at 48 and you can't walk the length of your street, or you can't go to Peru and walk the Inca Trail. You can't go to Everest Base Camp. You know, you can't do these things.
Most men probably aren't going to travel to Peru or go to Everest. So what advice would you give the average guy who might want to find adventure in his daily life?
Start now. I think with almost everything, fitness, health, travel, adventure, you know, it's very easy to put off. But I would say start now. You know, you don't have to. I mean, the UK has been a testing ground for adventurers that are going off to do some amazing stuff all around the world and into space. You know, it's the perfect place for going and learning climbing, learning caving, learning diving, like all of these things you can do in the UK. So I would say find what is it that interests you. What is it that you want to do? Some people don't want to adventure. But I would say arguably it's one of the best bang for buck things that you can do. If I was 20 and someone gave me 10 grand and I spent that 10 grand on a car, by the time I'm 30, I might remember it. So what? If I'd spent that 10 grand on going and doing a diving course, going to Thailand or Rajampat or pick your place, Philippines, and spent a month diving, that, or spent, you know, the same with climbing, do a climbing course and then go and do a climb, or yoga, go and do a yoga course, and or go and spend a month in India doing the yoga. That 10 grand, that experience then becomes part of your like DNA. Like it becomes part of your makeup of who you are. The car is immaterial and you'll forget about it. Whereas that experience then becomes part of who you are. And that's why, you know, for me personally, I've got this vast and rich depth of experiences around the world that then make me who I am. And it's very different to having things.
Completely. Are there any daily habits that you have that can help build resilience?
Yeah. I mean, there's all the normal. I have a cold plunge at home, which I probably don't use as much as I should do. Probably twice a week or something like that. The cold shower is the easiest one to do because it's just really hard. Doesn't cost anything. You just switch it to cold at the end of your shower. It's uncomfortable. That builds resilience because it's you're making a decision to make something uncomfortable. Training, having the discipline to get up and train regardless of the weather, regardless of the time of year, you know, like the fads, it's January, get in the gym, just do it all year. These little micro decisions that affect your life in the long run have the biggest compounding effect. And when it comes, so for me, when it comes to decision making, I'll give you my, like in a normal day, something comes in that interferes with gym, for example. I just do this temporal audit. I zoom out and I say, when I'm 65, is this Zoom call or the gym going to be the thing that I'm going to be glad that I did? And it's very rarely anything other than the run, the dog walk, time with the family, or the gym.
I don't have to do the cold shower thing, do I? I'm all right. Yeah.
I mean, the jury's out. I probably do it 3 times a week. The majority of the time I forget because I'm like running out of the shower and I'm like, I've got 10 things to do.
What's one thing every man should do before he dies?
That's a good question. It's probably changed over the years. Tell your dad that you love him, or that you, if you do, or your mum, and the kids, make sure they know. I think if it was, you know, I'm very heavily skewed adventure-wise, I would say to go and do something that puts you out your comfort zone safely, that makes you develop confidence in self and builds a bit of resilient capacity in yourself for yourself. And I think, if we all did this early on in the early years, in your teens and early 20s, then it would build a stronger foundation for later on when life does get difficult.
Great advice. Aldo, thanks so much for coming on Man Alive.
Thank you.
If people want to follow you or learn more about what you're doing, where's the best place?
Just at Aldo Kane on Instagram usually. I'm just delving into YouTube at the minute as well, so we'll see how that goes.
It's tough. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode of Man Alive, you would love this one. Go on, press it. Click now. Press it now.